Hello and welcome. So, today we have an eminent personality whom I've known for a long time. His long name, I always lose it. It is Tyagarajan Marthuvanan, but all of us know him as Rajan. The reason we have Rajan here is because of the experience he brings in building companies and building economies. So I would want to put it in that perspective. And Upeka, he's the managing partner at Upeka, and they do amazing work in helping startups, and they've been doing it for a long time now. And Rajan now focuses on AI companies from India wanting to go to the US and the global markets. So, Shaswat and I want to get in a little bit more details into understanding how, in today's world, we look at how do we build a small business or a startup you want to call. How do you scale it? How do you take it global? How do we take advantage of various facets of life which are available for us to create meaningful outcomes from the ideas we have? uh, Rajan was pivotal in starting a small community way back in 2006 2007 called Mobile Mondays, when I don't think even iPhone was launched at that time, or it was coming. And the Motorola's and the Nokia's and the small developer community used to meet on Monday evenings, and it used to be nice. I was never a mobile developer, but I used to go to meet people and learn from their experiences and what they're doing. So, in today's podcast, we'll focus on getting as much of knowledge from Rajan, because I think today's generation of organizations should listen to people like Rajan for their experience and the exposure they have. And Rajan himself runs his own podcast called Pivotal Clarity, which focuses completely on AI, and they shoot out an episode every week. If you are an AI enthusiast, you want to understand what's happening around the world, I think you should listen to him on his podcast. That will be much more addition to what we are doing today. So, welcome, Rajan. Thank you so much for taking time after your hectic travels and everything. I want to start off with a fundamental question. I also have a small bootstrapped company, but in your decade of Upeka, and I think more than 100 companies, if we go to your website, we'll see all the more than 100 companies. What are the three top outstanding traits you have seen where companies succeeded? And what are the three outstanding traits you have seen in companies which fail?
So, hi, first of all, I'm excited to be here. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. I know we spar in terms of our ideas and then, both evolve our thinking based off our conversation. Great to meet you as well, Shashwat. So, thanks for having me on your podcast. So, you said, what are three mistakes that I have observed?
Three traits in company startups, or your small, whatever you want to use the word. I use the word startup for discussion purposes. Three traits in startups which have helped them successful. Three traits in startups which have made them fail.
You know, I've spent close to 15 years observing startups, working with some of them, building my own, now investing, this is supporting a lot of them, building from India for global markets. The one thing that I would say for me is the most defining trait, even though it will sound very odd, is this timing.
Okay.
Right. So if you take a company like Webvan,
Mhm.
it was like a .com failure. But the same company, if you actually move further, 10, 15 years later, you have Instacart.
Correct.
Right. So it's all a particular idea why it becomes successful has got a lot to do with timing more than anything else. So it's not about bad idea. It might be an idea that is ahead of its time. And what I say is the most important skill that a founder has to develop is not to come up with an idea, but to actually make that assessment that this idea is right for this time.
Mhm.
right? So that is the most important trait that I have seen that actually defines success versus failures. I've seen people say, you know what, like building an accounting software won't work, right? And for many, it have not worked. But for those that have worked, because it was in the right time. So why now are you building this business?
Okay.
Right? This is very, very important. Many founders and investors, they are like, oh, we invested in e-commerce, it's not going to work. It's that famous Heraclitus saying, right? You know, you don't step on the same river twice, you're not the same, and so is not the river. So the timing part becomes a very, very important question to ask.
Okay.
The second thing that I would say is um, people call this as growth mindset. I say that the limit of a growth of a startup is bounded by the limit of the founder itself. What happens is you come up with an idea and then you think that this is the way the world is, and startup is one of the best ways to find out how reality works, because you know startup will demolish your mental model. You would think that you know people use this, people don't use this, or this is what is needed by the world, this is how like you know some equations work, and this is how like you know maybe the market size is. And the moment your business plan, your idea meets reality is where like you know the rubber meets the road, right? So that's the startup is the best way to actually challenge your mental models. And if you're not willing to challenge your mental models and not change it enough, as you are faced with responses from the real world, you will get stuck there.
Okay.
Right? And this is also a little funny for startups, because you know you like founders, you tell founders that they need to have deep conviction, they need to have like you know stead belief in what they are pursuing, but at the same time they need to be adaptable enough to change. Mark Anderson has famously called this as saying strong opinions weakly held. I use a little more terse because I love this frame from a scientist called Richard Hamming, who won a Nobel Prize. He says that you know scientists should have intellectual uncertainty while emotional certainty. You cannot question that whether Newton's law worked or not to actually go and come up with the next theory that you have to research on. You have to stand on the shoulders of the giants. You have to assume that Newton's law worked, and then you go, and then you say, "Oh, I saw some observation. This is not making sense. So I need to update my mental model to that." So you need to have that emotional certainty every day. Otherwise, if you keep doubting yourself, then you won't get up and then go for work. So you need to have that emotional certainty so that you can get to work daily. You can motivate people around you to work. Otherwise, if you are like a doubter, people are like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So people will not center around him to move forward. So that emotional certainty, but intellectual uncertainty, to challenge the mental models of to knowing like you know which idea is working on this current timing. I think that's the second most important trait. The third one, okay, let me think about the third one. Maybe I think you know these two are the most important one. I don't have a third one as powerful as the first and the second.
What are the two traits which where you saw startups fail? See, again, the sampling data I'm taking, you need not go out of your boundaries at all. In your 10 years, the number of startups you have seen, whom you have seen failed. I'm sure you have seen failed startups, or you have seen successful startups and things like that. When I say fail, it is not because of anything, it's not, but from a trait perspective, what should now, when we talked about successful traits, we talked about emotional balance, right? Timing. These are the two things what you mentioned. What are the two bottommost things which people don't consider, but they become very important, and that's why they can't take the next step?
I mean, the easy answer would be just you know reverse this. Right. But you know just to take that thought a little further in terms of where I think people get stuck. I think the first thing that people get stuck is that they have a very romantic version of what a startup is like, you know, which is people get seduced by survivorship bias. They only see like you know one person who becomes the Zomato, and they don't understand like you know why the 15 others that try to become a Zomato don't work. That doesn't mean that you should not try becoming like a Zomato, but still you have to understand why the other things did not work, right? So they have a very simplistic view of how the world works. And then therefore what happens because of that is people think that, you know, doing a startup is okay. Startup means I need to come up with an idea. If I came up with an idea, it is fantastic. So while that is true, but if you don't execute really well, if you don't understand, and execution means even understanding that you are getting the timing part right, right? So if you don't come up with a good idea, then people think it is about coming up with a good idea, and then the next step that they think is that it is about coming up with funding for that.
Correct. I was about
Right.
to ask.
And these are two intertwined steps that people think are the first two steps to be done for doing a startup. Many people will tell you, this is not rocket science, is that you need to have conversations with others to know that whatever you are thinking is how the business is going to shape up, is how the actual real world works. And therefore, what I suggest to people is talk to at least about 50 to 70 potential customers. Talk to at least about 15 people who have done this business and tried things before, who are like competitors. And then talk to at least about 10 to 15 people who know this space, right? And the reason for doing that is when we talk to potential customers, then you will understand that is there a real pain point, right? And when you talk to people who are like competitors, you will understand what are the things that they tried in terms of business model, offering, positioning, packaging, pricing, and you will know what did not work. And when you talk to people who are in the industry and who have observed this as like an external observer, and often enough, like, investors are people who do that and they do pattern matching. So they know, like, okay, what type of business models are working, not working. So you want to actually talk to this universe of 100 people, like 50 to 75 potential, then about like, competitors and others who have like a wide understanding of the industry. Not doing this costs you 4 to 5 years.
Correct.
Right. And if you have that conversation, then like your progress rate becomes much much faster. So if you talk to any repeat founders, what they would say is that, look, I'm going to take a year to have these conversations. I'm not going to register a company, I'm not going to come up with idea, I'm not going to go for funding. They are like, look, let me understand the lay of the land.
Correct.
Let me know this so well, so I know that when I'm actually going and starting this, it's like sharpening your knife before you get into a fight. So the mistakes that people do is that they are like, okay, I've come up with an idea. Let me jump
Correct.
in. So the first question that they have is how do I register? How do I incorporate? Who are the CAs? Should I have a logo?
Correct.
Should I build a brand? So these become the conversation. The more important ones are just understanding the lay of the land with those 100 conversations. So that I think is one of the most important mistakes that people make. The second thing that I think people make a big mistake is that they I say my view on this is like a little nuanced. My view is that on this point is about co-founders. So people are like, okay, I have an idea, I have funding, and I'm looking for co-founders. Looking for co-founders is like me saying, look, I want to marry Aishwarya Rai, right?
Correct.
Right? The question really is not that I want to marry Aishwarya Rai. The question really is, who does Aishwarya Rai want to marry? So they're looking for CTOs, they're looking for co-founders. So usually what happens is, and I've written a lot about co-founders, is that co-founders are usually from a circle of people that you have already worked with. So the co-founder relationship is almost like a partner in a marriage relationship. And it is about more like, the startup is the child and the two partners are raising it. It's not that, a single parent cannot raise it, a child, but if you have two parents, then it becomes easier more on the emotional side and being like a support for each other. People go to co-founder dating events and then they find co-founders. Look, a lot of like dating starts is what lead to a great relationship, but you want to know someone for a very long period of time in terms of saying, okay, can we be a partner on a very tough journey? So jumping into co-founder relationship and not investing in that co-founder relationship, that I think is one of the second most important reason where like big mistakes happen. And then if I were to just extend it, then how you hire people or the type of investor that you bring along in your team, that also I think people just make decisions in a haste. They are like, okay, you know what, let me go get a guy who's been an IIT guy, or let me go get a very named investor, because, or let me get a guy who's like made money when maybe he came from real estate and I need money, so let me bring him on board. So people make mistakes in forming the team, and that team in a broader sense of employee, co-founder and investor. So these are three broad mistakes that I would say that actually harm a startup, where you have not understood the lay of the land, you've not understood how to bring the right co-founder and the extended team.
I totally agree with you because I did a session last week called Five Steps to Scale Your Company in 2025. And two of the most important points I touched was the team and the culture.
Absolutely.
I don't know, fortunate or unfortunate, being in the corporate with the same company for over 13 years. I think they spoiled me a little bit on the cultural front, but I don't think uh, any company will be successful without building the culture of ownership. That's the most important thing what I have seen personally. And I try to, we are a 4-member team today, but even then I try to put in culture. I mean, they laugh. I mean, my co-founder Arun, and it's like, we're only 3-4 people, Hari. It starts like that. I can't create culture when you get to 100 people. You can create it only, we can start thinking about it only on when you're single or when you're double, you start it. It's like same the analogy what you have taken, wife and husband, right? So you inculcate good habits from day one they're born. The kids grow up to be different, but from day one they see nonsense at home, it becomes nonsensical outside.
So the culture part is also something a lot of people misunderstand, right? Like you said, Ari, rightly, that the first 20 people define the culture. After 20, then whatever culture was defined as behaviors of these first 20 people is what get carried over. I also often say that culture is not what you articulate. Culture is what you tolerate and celebrate, right? So what are the behaviors that you are saying that this is something that I'm going to tolerate, and what are the behaviors that you're rewarding in the team? And culture then becomes those activities that happen very similar to what you would have done, but when you're not around, right?
Correct.
That's what culture becomes. And having a very explicit and thoughtful approach to culture becomes a very important foundation for a startup to become really big. Culture, on the other hand, like, the people that will push back on that will say that, look, culture matters after you get to product market fit. However, like, to get to product market fit itself, what is the activity that you're celebrating and tolerating?
Correct.
Becomes an important element.
Correct. I mean, culture or discipline or anything.
One important aspect which I wanted to touch upon, does culture eat strategy for breakfast?
So, from a startup perspective, what I would say is that strategy is a very complicated work for a startup.
Yeah.
Right. One of the mentors that I had when I was doing my startup, he used to say that the summation of all the tactics that you do in a startup is equal to the strategy, which I may not fully agree with. Strategies is about saying how are you going to win the game. Right? What is the game? And maybe like you're building a tech business, maybe a small business or a scalable business. How are you going to actually win the game over competition? That is what, in simple words, strategy is. Culture is about, like, the spirit, the DNA that you have, right, in helping you win the game. Now, if you are someone who is very, very tactical, who's someone who's going to cut the corners to win the game, that also has led to a lot of people winning the game. But if you're very principled, like let's say Muhammad Ali saying that, look, I will always have a fair fight, I will not do a underhook, right? That also helps win the game. So it's not that, culture, like, specifically says that, if you had great culture, or if you had a culture that everybody celebrated as, oh, this is very fair and principled, that it allows you to win the game. There are people who have won the game without sounding very fair and principled. So therefore, culture in that sense is not about, okay, good culture helps win the game, bad culture helps win, helps lose the game. When you have a good culture, you become the best team possible. You attract the best talent available, because people are like, look, I want to hang out with a guy who does not undercut. I want to hang out with a guy like Muhammad Ali, and I will be known for, like, playing the game like that. So culture helps you give an edge, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. I don't know whether it fully applies to startup world.
If I mean, if using the same terminologies, if I want to change that, what are your key principles to foster culture or build a high performance team when you are small or when you're growing and you're scaling? what are your insights into it? What are your principles? What everybody should consider while building in today's world, which is everything. See, if you go back 30, 40 years ago, I mean, the big companies, IBMs, Apples, Microsofts, everybody, people were there for a long time. And, for various reasons, market is not there. I can't quit and job. But today I can jump, morning I can work in one company, afternoon joining some company. But when I am building a organization, what are the principles I should focus on to build fast, or in this fast changing world? What are the principles I should consider to build high performance teams?
I don't think the word principle actually makes it sound very that there is only one principle, right?
Okay.
So, Shashwat, you've been in marketing, and I'm guessing you might have seen that famous Steve Jobs video where he says how the Think Different ad was created.
Correct.
You may have seen that, right? So, where he starts with saying marketing is about values.
Correct.
That's his opening statement. And he says, what do you stand for? And he talks about saying Nike. Nike builds a commodity. And this is 30 years ago. Nike builds a commodity. And then he asked this question saying, if I told you that Nike was going to build a hotel, do you know what would it be about? And he says, yeah, it's going to be about athletics. It's going to be about celebrating sportsmanship. But if I asked you, if Hilton is coming out with a shoe, do you know what would it be? And people are like, no, I don't know. Because we don't know what Hilton stands for. We know what Nike stands for. And that's the point that he makes about in terms of saying marketing is about values. So the culture, the values, they're synonyms in that sense. Like if you actually articulate on what do you stand for, right? And because of that, people get attracted to you. Those are the principles. So are you able to stand for something? And are you able to sort of communicate it where you become the lighthouse of the values that you stand for, and people get attracted for that. So if you say that our culture is about speed, ship fast, break things. That's what you stand for. Then like engineers who care about saying, okay, I have a hacker type of a culture, I will ship fast and I will break things. Then that's what Facebook gets known for, and that's what it attracts. If you say that I don't do any evil, and that's what you exhibit in your action, then that's what you stand for. So for me, me and my co-founders, when we come together, there are a few things that we care for. And my co-founder Prasanna, you've known, and I and Shekhar and Gokul, we are early on, at least, this is the way I articulate it, saying that, the people that I work with, I want to work with people who have high say-do ratio. What do they say? What do they do? Does it have good high say-do ratio? If it is there, then I love working with that people. So that is what we started having as a conversation. Not that we wrote it in some golden paper or anything, but this is what we want to say, and this is what we want to live up to. So then that becomes part of our culture. We start attracting other employees of that kind, and then other founders of that kind. And wherever we see that founders or employees, they don't match it, we are like, okay, tada bye bye, we can't have a good relationship or a good working ability with each other. So that then starts getting defined as the culture or the principle that you talked about. So say-do ratio is one very important thing. Then we care about people, and not just about work, but a little bit more than work. We are someone who are very, very, I would say, forthcoming in our feedback. We're not going to sort of massage it. Look, you may not like what I'm saying, but this is what it is. And in the short term, it may be painful. They may be like, oh, this guy, is very brutal and blunt. But then in the long term, we feel, that creates much better trust in the relationship. So these are all quirks. These are not principles. These are quirks of a particular group. And that quirk gets projected in an action. Sometimes this is voiced in words, and that attracts people. So that is culture.
Okay.
Almost like collective value system of the company.
Collective value system in behavior.
And not just the posters in a...
It's not the posters. Yeah, it's not the posters. Right.
But I also wanted to go back to our conversation, and you started off when just before this you spoke about especially accelerators like you need to identify the auto rickshaw which will take the rocket ship route because you have that kind of a rocket ship fuel. Can you elaborate on that, especially in terms of now you are looking at it from outside and you have only so much of information about it. How do you identify that this can take that route and it will not fail? Of course, you have also mentioned that 1 in 20 will actually pass and the rest likely to fail. What are the two or three things that you look at?
I mean, this is like almost like the $1 trillion question, right? So if you look at Jensen Huang, who's is like one of the most richest person now in the world, up until 5 years, up until 10 years, I mean, he's been doing this for like 30, 35 years.
Yeah.
Nobody was able to recognize, maybe Sequoia did, right? 30, 35 years ago they did. And then he's he's created a company which is close to $1 trillion worth. So this is a very difficult thing to do. I always tell my team, people that I hang out with in terms of what business are you in? And I actually have an updated view, shared it with one of our partners. The business that we are in is I say that, it is like identifying Sachin Tendulkar when he's in his kindergarten. The the updated version of that is that, finding the Gukesh before he becomes grandmaster. which Westbridge did, which our partner is and I hats off to them. This is about identifying talent that becomes talent before it becomes the talent, right? And it's a very, very subjective thing.
Okay.
And you make 10 such identification, and then maybe 2, if it works out, then it is fantastic. And it has got to not just to do with the talent alone, but also the timing, right? And that's where the timing part that I said earlier becomes relevant. If you had identified Bukesh 10 years ago, it is not going to be useful. Even if you identified Vishwanath Anandan, maybe it was. Or if you identified 10 years ago, it was not useful. So you have to understand the game, and you have to understand the players who are going to be really, really good. And then you say, oh, you know what? Okay, this game, cricket, is going to become big. And let me identify the Sachin, right? When you're identifying the Sachin, you might actually identify Kambli, the bet maker, not go up. So one thing that I have come to know, right, of just working the last 10, 15 years, and just the observation part is it is 60% about the individual.
The founder.
The individual, you will see that there is a certain amount of drive, there is a certain amount of relentlessness, there is a certain amount of pushing things, and it doesn't have to be very salesy or aggressive or anything. They are just relentless about moving forward. And if you've seen Gukesh, right, he's one of the most zen guys ever. He's calm, right? But if you look at his the first video that he gave as a young kid, he's he's just he says, I want to be a grandmaster, and he says in the most calm, composed way. Right. So it's not to do with, aggression. It is a question of that relentless, okay, I want to do, and I want to do. And the moment they understand that their game is not at their school level, not at their state level, and it is at the global level, and they are able to grow themselves into that. That is where it is different from people who go after really grand ambition, and those that are saying, okay, you know what, I'm okay with this. And I have seen this is a difference. Now, timing on top of it is important, right? So it's just not that the relentless, oh, I want to do this, because a lot of people have tried it, and if you try that in hockey today, it's not going to be useful, right? So the game is important, the player is important, the timing of the game is important. Then seeing the only thing that I think I have observed is that relentlessness of people call that as this growth mindset of saying, okay, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and really just for the for the love of the game, right? That I think is the only answer. Very subjective. I wish I had a better answer.
No, but interesting, because even in the case of Gukesh, and I remember Paddy Upton's interview, very, very specifically mentions that even though he was winning that last round, but he still thought, let me tire my opponent and ensure that in the next set of games, in case if I lose this one or this one goes for a draw, I should try and get the best out of it. So moving forward, thinking forward, is that a very important winner trait?
I would call that as in that relentlessness, right? Of saying that, I need to continue to play this game. I need to learn from the best. I will utilize all the resources that I have. And when I understand that the game is moved to the next level, then I will expand my thinking. Where I see many people get plateaued is that, when they expand the game, like for instance, if you go from school level to district level, or from national level to international level, they are overwhelmed, right? And that's where like having resources helps. That's where like having people who have gone through this helps. I think a lot of help to Gukesh came from Vishy.
Yeah.
Right, and Vishy had traveled that particular path, and he was able to give him coaching and guidance. I know we turned the founder topic into a chess discussion.
We're talking about trades. We're talking about trades. I was
So, but interesting. I want to pick on this particular point and correlate it back to the startup piece, which is Gukesh actually also looked at Vishwanathan Anand to win this entire tournament. And if I just have to take a parallel, startup founders typically from the 0 to 1 journey, 1 to 10 journey, and 10 and beyond, they need to look at fractionals or the experts who are there in the ecosystem, utilize their experiences and try and win the game. What are your thoughts on those?
Oh, great question. So I want to sort of have a nuance about two specific things, right? One, there is Vishy, another is Kramnik. Kramnik is the coach. Vishy is also coaching them, right? So when you look at Vishy, you get the inspiration and the belief that you also can become a world champion. Right? So one of the things that I found, which is perhaps underappreciated, is that this confidence and this ambition, because you have a hero, or you have let's not even call it as hero, as a reference point. Like when you know that others have beat this benchmark, you also can, then it changes the ambition of most of the people. Like, oh, someone who looks like me, walks like me, talks like me, has actually breached that benchmark, gives you inspiration, plus also the confidence that I can also do it. So the first person who breaches the mark is the most important, so which I think Vishy did, and then set the stage, right? So if you look at it from a startup perspective, the first person to go IPO or on a global bourses, or like, to like, set a benchmark of getting to $1 billion in revenue, they serve as inspiration, right? And then there are experts, like, the fractional experts that you talked about. They come and say, okay, don't make these mistakes, don't make these mistakes, don't make these mistakes.
Yes.
And therefore you can actually progress faster. Is where the fractional type of experts come and play the role. So you need both the inspiration and the confidence and the reduction of mistakes that happen in winning the game.
But again, you also have two classes of people, right? The one set is the advisor and consultant group, and then a set which is fractional. Now, fractional have the skin in the game, whereas consultant and advisor is for a project for a certain period of time, but without much of action or execution, right? It's more like a strategy planning. If it happens, great. If it does not happen, you move on to the next one. So, what is your advice to the founders? Should you go in for folks who actually have skin in the game, or certain projects you can look at consultant advisors? How do you advise your founders, your set of founders?
A lot of aspects into this. So let me see if I can break it. So one is the whole aspect of how and who to take advice from. The other aspect is about, like, there are people who have skin in the game, and are they the right or the better partners, versus people who are someone who may be process expert, but are they good people to take advice on? So I'll break it.
Sure.
One of the things that I would say is let me just address the skin in the game part, right? So my own understanding of the skin in the game is I think it's a far more nuanced point. Like, if you actually think about it, people will say, hey, if you've not invested money, do you even have skin in the game? There are people who are going to invest their reputation, and reputation may be more important than investing money into the game. And I have seen people say that, oh, this person has not invested money into your startup, so he doesn't seem to have skin in the game. So therefore, why are you working with them? Better to bring people who have skin in the game, which I want to push back a little bit, right? So people who are bringing process, people who are bringing reputation, they are like, investing that. So that is also skin in the game. Skin in the game has a very surface level view. So therefore, whenever somebody says skin in the game, I try to look at what is their incentive, right? Why are they saying what they are saying, right? It may be the storyteller's moral, not the story's moral of skin in the game. And for anybody to understand skin in the game, the best book is to study Nicholas Nassim Taleb. And he's the one who's defined this in the best possible way. He asked this question: do you want to get operated from a guy who looks very shabby, or do you want to get operated by a guy who looks very tip top, right? And then the counterintuitive answer there is the guy who looks very clean, packaged, and great. He may have had it very easy coming up because everybody looks just at the package, and therefore, like they are like, oh, they'll let him graduate with a medical degree, give him experience. But a guy who looks very shabby, he would have had to actually fight because of like people are like, oh, you don't look like a doctor. So Taleb says that the guy who does not look like a doctor is the one who want to get operated by. But advice part is slightly different. Advice is this. In fact, I'll say that, how to take advice itself a skill that a founder needs to build. It's a muscle that a founder needs to build. Sure. Because like Nawal Ravikant said, right, enough number of people, all the advice in the world will cancel to zero. So you need to actually find out who to take advice from and how to take advice. And some of the things that I have noticed that founders do well over a period of time is in how they take advice. So one founder that I worked with told me, he said, you want to actually divide the topic of advice into two things. One, which is a problem that is very old, and one, a problem which is very new. So he says that when it comes to things like taxation, how to deal with HR issues, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to go and talk to people who are expert at those areas. So these are problems that are not recent. These are problems that have been there forever. As long as people existed, business existed, the same accounting issues were there, the same people issues were there. So you want to go and take advice from those people who have actually been there, done that, and then you can take it. But on topics like, how to do sales, how to do design, how to do marketing, there is no set pattern. These are not problems that are the same across every year. There, anybody who gives you advice, you want to sort of question it, challenge it, understand if this person is just giving the advice from the right spirit. So those tactics, we should not just take that on face value. Take that particular advice and apply it into your context. There is another saying that, advice is one person's experience and rules, right? So is this person actually just doubting his experience, saying that this is how it was done? Or is he understanding your context and then saying that, okay, in this situation, in this context, this is how you should be solving the problem. So the advice part and the skin in the game part are two different things. Going back to your reference of the fractional experts versus those who are like, consultant like, and in the consultant light, if they are coming and saying that, I have understood your context, in your context, this is what you should be doing, then you take it differently. But if the consultants are people who have been solving this problem, which are like age-old problems, then in that particular case, skin in the game, no skin in the game, there doesn't matter. This is actually going to be very useful, right? So the whole advice taking part is a skill that a founder needs to learn how to do.
So you mentioned marketing, and within marketing, there are certain aspects which probably a skin in the game will work really well, or maybe in the sales part, there are certain aspects. For example, if you have to scale up enterprise at the enterprise level, definitely you a VP of sales who has not handled that, or they are the 5 million sub guys, they will not be able to kind of conceptualize how to go after an account, create that account planning, think about account based marketing and get into that. So scaling has a lot of challenges, especially on the when you are thinking of as a CRO or as a CMO. What are the 3 or 4 things which you advise that this is what you should look for, especially from the CRO point of view or the 1 million kind of guys, 5 million, 10 million, where should you bring in the CMO, where should you bring in the CRO, until what time can you actually run with probably a fractional guy who has skin in the game and working towards the stated objective, whatever you might have?
So I actually work with very, very early stage, right? At that particular stage, what happens is product marketing, sales, engineering, they all get mixed up like noodles, right? Let's say you actually find out product market fit. Uh, till you find product market fit, and the product market fit definition could be different for somebody focused on BV, SMB, or enterprise. Maybe at enterprise, if you have had 3 or 5 customers that you have closed, then you are like, maybe in a state of product market fit. Basically, the idea being you have a segment. Are you able to sort of bring in a message that resonates with someone? And is the purchase happening? And then usage of the product happening? Is there repeat usage intent to upgrade of the product happening? These are all broad indicators of product market fit. Till you do that 3 to 5 enterprise customers, till you get, let's say, 20 to 30 SMB customers, these elements don't get established until that particular point in time. Everything is relative. Product, marketing, yes, they all get mixed up. Till that point in time, at least the founder that I work with, I say that, please do all of this yourself. And invariably, I have seen that, when people take a very top down approach instead of taking this bottom up approach of saying, okay, I'm going to build a team the way is that how a large company starts a team, which is, okay, I bring in a marketer, I bring in a VP of sales, bring in like people who have already done this and then try to work it out. I have seen that leads to a lot of churn where VP of marketings are replaced, VP of sales are replaced. So till pre-product market fit, I suggest that people do their own sales and marketing. At that particular point in time, they can bring in a fractional CMO or a CRO to as an advisor for it. But this heavy duty of work of what is going to sell, who's my customer, what is the message that is going to resonate, what is the channel in which this is working, these things founder have to figure out till that product market fit happen. The moment product market fit happens, you as a founder get a high level list of things on what is working. So you want to write that down as your sales playbook, as your marketing playbook, and then bring in people to say, okay, this is what has worked in my context. Please repeat this. And at that particular point in time, you would have created a lot of debt, just like the technical debt in terms of your sales and your marketing. Maybe you have not put in the right process for content, you have not put in the right sequence. So somebody who's like a fractional expert can come and then, fix that for you, right, as a founder. And once you are like, at a place where it feels like, okay, you know what, I exactly know what go-to-market is working, which is a combination of the sales and marketing playbook, which is answering questions like, message, channel, ICP. Once these are clear, right, and what is my sales cycle is going to be, then you can bring in full-time people to say, you know what, this is exactly the playbook that is working. We have cleaned up the debt that we had. Now it is the time to actually scale and make sure that this playbook is executed so that, we can get to that fast pace growth objective that we have. We want to grow by 2x or 3x, things like that. At that particular point in that, want to switch over to bringing in full-time CMOs, full-time CIOs, full-time GTM folks. That's the thing that I have seen work. And I mostly work with, very, very early stage who are getting to about 1 million. We get into funding.
Understood. Let me come back to another part where with your kind of experience, you have kind of advised a lot of founders on the marketing aspects. And I want to pick your brain on one specific thing. Most of the founders actually consider marketing as a gumball machine, famously told by John Miller, that you actually cannot treat it like you put in money and you'll get MQLs and SQL and then life will change. It doesn't happen that way. The playbook has changed in the last 5 years. How do you now kind of advise your founder circle to ensure that they get the best out of marketing?
There are many ways to sort of understand and skin this. At the very earliest stage, and also more from a B2B perspective, even though what I'm saying may be broadly applicable, on the B2B side, like how you said, most people think marketing means it needs to generate inflow, which is a very tactical way of looking at it. But you need to actually have little bit more than just MQL for actually marketing to work. Marketing, in fact, many people say is a very strategic arm, right? Or we spoke a little earlier about Steve Jobs, who talks about marketing is about values. It is about setting the foundation of what do you stand for. And when you put a voice out and say that this is what I stand for, then you attract people to what you stand for, right? And that's why he gives this example of saying that Nike stands for athletics and Hilton doesn't stand for anything. So you wouldn't know, like, if Hilton created a shoe brand, that what it stands for or how people will resonate with that. But, like, breaking down for B2B, I would say marketing should be about three things. Marketing, one is that are you being understood? Okay. Right. Number two is when people think about something, that's something you can define. Are you getting recalled? Right. And then the third thing is, are you trusted? So if you are building a service, have you explained it in a way that people can understand you? And that inside marketing is a job of what is called as positioning. And for engineers, I break it down into X and Y axis. You say that put an X axis, Y axis. In the X axis, you put the word association. And in the Y axis, you put differentiation. If you say that, your toothpaste, if you say your sensor bank, then you say your toothpaste, and the differentiation is called sensitivity. Then if you say your CRM, but only for people who are building HVAC systems. Right? So are you creating something that is well understood? And when people hear you, are they able to associate you with that? And are they able to differentiate? So think of this as a container in the head. And for every categories that exist, there is one container. For toothpaste, we will have one. CRM will say Salesforce, right? For emails, we may say Mailchimp. Email marketing system will say Mailchimp. So in that container, why will you put there? Now, if people have done a lot of marketing and created that messaging saying association of toothpaste is with Pepsodent, then either you create another container or you repeat the message enough to say that, you upseat but Pepsodent with Sensodyne. So either you have the choice of saying that I'm an alternate for toothpaste, or you say I will redefine the container saying sensitive to toothpaste. So therefore Sensodyne isn't there. So first part of marketing is association, differentiation. Are you getting understood? The second part of it is when I think about toothpaste, am I thinking about you? That will happen because you told a great story. You told a story of saying, are you afraid of confidence? Right? And that's the ad that was created. That was the jingle that was created. That was the campaign that was created. So the way you tell the story for that category, are you getting recalled? Then the third part of it is this is all fine. But if I don't trust you, then I'm not going to sort of transact with you. Right? So this part is saying, oh, dental association says that this is a trusted brand. Here is one person who's like a famous person who says that this is something that I trust. So marketing then has to be divided into these three things of saying, am I being understood? Am I being recalled? Am I being trusted? This does not get measured by NGOs. Right? So the first thing that needs to be done in marketing is this saying, what do I stand for? What is the category that I want to be associated with? How am I going to be standing out? What is the story that I'm telling to get recalled? And what elements in the story am I putting that people trust me? This has to be figured out through conversation with people and understanding them, understanding the biases that they had, understanding things that they resonate with. Once you do this, then you can execute a campaign and then see that that particular campaign is going to generate MQL or not. And between the MQL and this other part of marketing, I call that MQL generation is like a ground game. It is like, winning on RB, on the feet. If you actually go and just focus yourself only on the RB, right, then it is going to be a very, very tough platform. You need tens and thousands of people to do it. But when you have these three parts covered, this is your air team. This is like your air force. So if you send in the market, right, an air force that makes it easy for the MQLs to happen. So when you then engage with the MQL, then they'll be like, okay, I understood what you are about. Right? If you are relevant to me, then, next time I'm having this problem, I will think about you. And by the way, I can trust you. So therefore, I can engage with you when a sales guy is going to come and say, oh, do you have a toothache problem? And you want to sort of solve this, and then I'm here to actually help you with that. Then you're like, okay, I'm going to make the purchase. So MQL is equal to marketing is one of the most incomplete picture about marketing. But B2B founders only think about marketing as MQLs.
But you very beautifully captured those three things. If I actually have to take a step back, that's nothing but branding. How do you do it? It's not just the logo, it is not just that one identity. But if you look at these three things, you will be able to capture the essence of the
People confuse brand to be the symbol of recall and trust, right? The symbology is his logo. But what that symbol stands for, because if I look at that symbol, I can understand this is about to. I can understand that this is what it stands out for. I can understand that this is why I can trust. When you see the tick mark, behind the tick mark, celebration of athletics is what it stands for. And that is why we are like, oh, we want that. And how do we know? Because like, oh, Nike Air Jordan shoes, Jordan endorses it, right? That is why I trust it.
But if I actually have to take a step back, then you have also talked about autonomous GTM, and let me try and break it in my sense that possibly the army can be catered to by the agent AI, and you can have different functions doing the different aspect for the lead generation or for creating the MQLs. And then you have an air cover of the branding to actually bring in the recall value, and together then it's a package which can actually help you scale or grow.
That's a great way to put it. See, the autonomous GPM may actually scale the ground game, right? But the aspect of recall trust will not go away. No amount of AI can actually take that. Unless we as humans are willing and ready to delegate all our decisions to an end. And that really depends on what is the stakes that are it. If it is like a $1 or like let's say a $10 and I have billions of dollars at disposal, then I'm like, okay, I can give it to a junior employee or I can give it to an agent, right? But if the consideration of that purchase is going to be significant, right? And not just in terms of dollar value, in terms of like this going wrong, right? At that particular point in time, there is going to be a human involvement. So in the autonomous GTM, it is not going to be the case that the humans are not involved. As long as trust is involved before making a decision for purchase, okay, right? Humans are always going to be involved. And that's why I'm not worried about autonomous GTM taking out a job of a marketing.
Or a SDR maybe.
Or anywhere there is trust that is involved in transaction, right? There is going to be a human involved. And where high trust is in it. And there might be some part which is like low level values may be automated, but where you are going to make let's say $1,000 purchase, it'd be like, I need to know who else has tried it, why, and I don't want to look like. And in B2B, they say that the biggest issue is fear of looking stupid. People in B2B don't want to make a purchase because they don't want to look stupid in front of their colleague or in some future discussion that they're having, and that's why they're very risk averse. So as long as that situation is going to be there, right? So trust is going to be very important.
So essentially, sorry, just one last part of that question. So human plus AI is essentially the key tenet of at least for the next 5 years, right? But again, if you I'm wrong here, but if you just take a step back, go back about 20, 30 years, the internet happened, mobile happened, cloud happened, right? All of this took a long time, and people could figure out that, okay, this is where the world is going, right? In case of AI, those 30 years, 20 years, 10 years will get crunched into 5 years, which means it is very fast fail kind of a situation. So under this scenario, do you believe that, and again, I know you are a AI expert and I want to hear your voice on that. What kind of advice do you give to founders, especially on the, and I'm not looking at the chat GPT kind of an answer, I'm looking at a very, very incisive view, how to treat AI in your business, and how do you ensure that what part needs to be looked after by humans, and what are the areas where AI can play a very great role and give you efficiency or give you the scale?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that I initially read, and I believe I think may have like reshared that view is that in AI we are overestimating in the short term and underestimating in the long term. So while the internet and mobile take 10 years, I also think that AI may also take similar in terms of having the right kind of adoption. And at the start of the year, when I was looking at AI and then looking at how the adoption is going, uh, we shared it in a report that we published in March, saying the adoption will be a function of where the stakes are least to the highest in terms of function. So if you take an organization, where if you replaced it with AI and if things go wrong, then how do you actually look at scenario B for that, or what is the alternative for that? That is how it will keep changing. So, for instance, if you look at something like sales requires a high amount of trust. And if sales numbers go wrong, it directly affects the revenue numbers of the company and it will get a lot of heads to it. So, in that particular case, you would see that people will be more and more thoughtful in adopting AI. They want to see much less error. They want to see like risk mitigation before they do it. On the other hand, if you look at something like writing code and improving code efficiency, there in many cases, if the code is incorrect, then you go and just correct it. So the stake is not that high that people are like, oh my god, how can it write a bad code and nobody's gonna get fired because 5 lines of code were written bad. They're gonna go and say, okay, you know what, we're gonna try another time. They're gonna try another time, and maybe we'll improve the quality check that you have to do on it. So first adoption now also, if we see in this year, the highest amount of adoption of AI is happened in engineering and coding. And that is, if you look at the dollars that are invested, or if you also look at the dollars of revenue that have come up. I mean, Copilot, GitHub Mobile, even though it happened through bundling, it has had the highest amount of revenue growth in Microsoft. Or if you look at a company like Cursor, first year of $1 million, next year on $60 million of revenue, completely bottom up growth, right? So you can see that, in the coding side, this is where the adoption is really high. So then what will come is I was surprised, but maybe legal is again taking a lot of adoption. There people are looking at how to mitigate if some legal answers are not going correctly. Right? I would have thought that legal will take a very long term. The other area where I'm seeing is a lot of medical tasks are getting AI intervention, and I thought the stakes are high. But what is happening there is the amount of human capacity available to solve those problems are so low that people are saying, oh, you know what, let us apply AI. If there is anything that is going to go wrong, then we'll put a human in the loop to ensure that, the risks are taken care of. So coding, legal, healthcare, where it is a combination of what is the shortage and what is the stakes that are there. Finally, I think, where high value stakes is where AI will replace, right? So by the time it will come to sales, for sure, it is going to take a while. So therefore, I'm not a big believer of the AI as players. Oh, no. Right. In fact, just 2 days ago in Reddit, somebody said a guy fired his entire team and now he's trying to hire, because he want to replace it with AI engineers. Now he's again looking for people to hire. So there is going to be a little bit of back and forth that is going to happen. So it is going to take more time. But the highest one that I see now is this coding, legal, and healthcare. That is where the adoptions are happening. Where there is human shortage and the stakes are manageable.
So on that AI SDR part, you are mentioning that largely it's a calling which will take a lot of time, but the rest of the enrichment, mailing exercise, and all of the other grunt work, possibly AI can do much better.
AI can do all those places where a decision around, I need to have more trust about this is involved. Right? Wherever in a conversation where it is going to be saying, oh, I can't trust this. At that particular point in time, if you did automation, that is going to fail. Like for instance, even an SDR conversation, see, if you take a prosumer application today, the prosumer application, we'll just go ahead and try the experience and then say, you know what, the experience is good enough for me to make him purchase. right? But if it is going to be like, complex enterprise purchase, right, where POCs have to be done, where it has to be explained, right? In that complex process, you can use some amount of AI automation to say, okay, were you looking for these questions? Were you looking for Joe's RFP related answers? Let me bring in. But if that conversation needed to have a human so that people are feeling comfortable, that part can be done.
So that part, probably a fractional CRO or a fractional sales head can take it much better than the AI or than any other one.
What may actually happen is that fractional CROs are like people like the experts,
Mm.
right? They may actually come in and use these sales tools to automate the junior parts,
Mm. Mm.
what a junior would do, and they will have more leverage. And this is what is happening across AI if you really look at it. That experts are becoming more powerful because they that's it. How the process works. They use the tool to remove all the work that they don't want to do. And the people who are novices, they are getting moved out of the system because the average novice input by an AI is better than the average human novice.
That's a great way of putting it. That's a great way.
I'll shift gears a little bit, Rajan. In one of your articles, if I'm not wrong, the Devon Demolition, you talked about branding for technical founders. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, so I try to work with non-traditional tech businesses when I sell my services. The reason being, I think I can connect a manual workflow to how you can or use technology to automate or whatever. Whenever when I started my first company for co-working software, whenever I approached a co-working space, everybody had a technical co-founder. Everybody, I mean, since we are a huge population of techies here, so every co-working place had a techie co-founder. But none of them I spoke to, the 50, 60 spaces I spoke to in that 2 years, none of them exist today. Okay. And I personally feel is because they couldn't brand it properly or they couldn't leverage technology properly to enhance the efficiencies. Many look at technology as a part and parcel of life. No, I look at it as if you are investing in technology, you should enhance the efficiencies of the outcome. That's where I come into picture. So, what are the challenges you have seen with technical co-founders in branding their products and services to the outside world?
Having been an engineer and spent a lot of time in marketing, and therefore I'm saying into that caveat, if you are an engineer, then you will find marketing hard to get.
Correct. Correct.
Because it is a different.
It's a science altogether, Rajan. For me, marketing.
I would actually call it a little differently. I would say it's not a science. Engineering runs on logic, marketing runs on psychology.
Correct.
Which is like, it may not have logic.
Correct.
Where it is a lot more about understanding humans and understanding humans in a very general sense of a way, because when you're doing sales, I can know a little bit about you, your background, and based on that I will automatically adjust on how I have to have conversation.
Correct.
But when I'm marketing with faceless people, then I have to just generally understand that people have anchoring bias, people have confirmation bias. Can I use some of those to tell a story in a way that they will like my story? So marketing is fundamentally about understanding the human emotion. And that is where technical founders find it hard. When I tell them that as an engineer you went on a hackathon, you wear the sweat, and you are like, no, I want to be earning the sweat. That is marketing at work, right? Because you are like saying, I'm associating with this, I want to stand for this. And this goes to the definition that we earlier talked about, saying marketing is about value, what do you stand for, things like that, right? So that part, this is where a lot of founders struggle a little bit. And over a period of time, they pick it up. And then they use the power of logic to actually be a lot more better from a psychological perspective. So, branding, marketing, in going back, I would say that you have to understand, you have to be able to explain yourself in a way that you are understood. You need to tell something in a way that people remember you. If, let's say you're building an API platform, and when people are wanting to build any application, they should remember you over Stripe or any other great API that exists out there. And why are people going to remember this? Because they've had like phenomenal experience with you, or they know that you stand for great documentation, and that is why they are going to pick you over others, right? And then you'll also have to understand that your target audience has to trust you, right? Correct. So, for instance, if you're building a tech product, a sales guy cannot go and make a sale. In fact, one of the startups that I worked with, the sales guy will not sign himself as SDR or, or someone as a sales guy. He will sign himself as a saying technical evangelist. And that simple word of difference being technical evangelist versus sales guy. When that email is going to a developer, he would resonate more with the technical evangelist. By the way, the more deeper insight is you can never sell anything outbound to a technical guy. You can only get him to come to you and then say, "Oh, you are great." And then I give this example of this website called PostHawk. PostHawk, if you look at the website of PostHawk, it's a replacement for Mixpanel and Google Analytics all in one. But the way PostHawk is designed, the moment the developer goes there, he feels like, wow, this particular website is built for a developer. He gets me. So PostHawk never does outbound. PostHawk just does content and has built the product in such a way that developers aspire to be like that. This is creating that trust with that particular audience.
Okay.
Right? So this again to me is a psychology. But you can say that, "Look, I've been a developer, so I intuitively understand what a developer But if you are a developer and you are building, let's say, a Salesforce CRM, like that, you need to have the same in-depth level understanding of that particular audience and say what triggers him, what will get him to trust you, what will make him remember you. Can I explain it in a way that he doesn't roll his eyes? So those are the parts that technical farmers will be able to reach.
Okay. Okay.
But do you think a technical founder will ever understand a tofu or a bofu and how tofu is very important and equally bofu is important? And how will you explain that to a technical founder?
See, tofu, the first time you said tofu, people will say, yeah, is it an alternative paneer? And there, like, now will that joke will come out. But see, the tofu and bofu, top of the funnel, more middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, is actually a very technical term. Once you actually explain that this is what happens, this is like, you have to imagine a sales process as a funnel. A lot of people come to you, you want to logically separate them into 3 different stages and then take people from one stage to another, because this is how process can be modeled. That process part people get it. The difficult part to get is why in GoFu trust is important. That is the part that people don't get, because GoFu to transaction will not happen unless there is urgency and trust.
Yep.
Urgency will say, okay, like, now it will happen, this quarter it will happen. But if I don't trust you, right, then I'm not going to buy from you, because you have to allay my fears. And my fear is that I don't want to look stupid in front of my colleagues and I want to get promoted. I want to get promoted and I want to not look for stupid in front of my colleagues is what is triggering the purchase. Where people struggle with is, oh, that they asked for that feature and our product doesn't have that feature, so let me go build more feature. That is where the gulf is.
Okay. Rajan, you in your organization, so today, Upeka, if I look at, they are looking at startups who are focusing on AI solutions for the US/global markets. How can somebody who is not living in that ecosystem solve a problem for that ecosystem?
I've actually changed my view multiple times on that way. So at one point in time, I started with saying that we need to be very close to where your customers are.
Correct.
We need to understand the experience and you have to understand the nuances, things like that. It is important. But I've also seen enough examples within Upinga itself, where on this have not traveled to their customer location and are able to sort of build products. I think the nuance wherever I've seen that they're able to do that really well is through well-defined categories. So well-defined categories who don't have to exactly be there. We just need to know what is the pain point in that well-defined category at that particular point in time. What are spaces that are opening up, and how can you actually use those gaps and build a differentiation? I'll give a very simple example. One of the startup that I work with, they actually build social media scheduling. Right.
Okay.
They have actually surprised me a lot by growing, and they're being fully bootstrapped. Whenever they were the only equity holders inside the company. Buffer was around. There are 15 other companies that have been around. There is a public company that is bootstrapped and all. However, they've been able to identify a different differentiation. They started focusing on digital media agencies who wanted to manage social media scheduling for other areas. So they came up with this concept of social in. And that has helped them grow really, really well. And the founders did not travel and meet them till they crossed their maybe a million or million and a half. Right? So in these cases, they were able to understand what is the need of the market without even going there, build a feature parity product, and use SEO and digital marketing to actually build a business to sizable business. But where it is a completely new category. And in that particular case, that for instance, we take Wattpix. They started out as something, and then Khadem went to Dreamforce or Salesforce event. That's when we realized that the segment that he was focusing was not the right segment. We need to adjust the set. And that adjustment of segment is what helped them completely become a rocket ship, right? And that required that immersion. So my guess is that in existing categories, you may not need to be present in the markets. Like for instance, if we are building an AI tool today, Hari and I were chatting. All of the AI builders are all hanging out on Twitter.
Twitter, correct.
Whether it is a Tevin co-founder or whether it is the Jenny co-founders, they're all hanging on to Twitter. They're all exchanging notes. So as long as if you're building a prosumer product, you can get all the learning of what's working, what's not working in hanging on at Twitter. On the other hand, if you are building something like an enterprise and if your ticket size is $10,000, so anything north of $10,000, your first requirement is you have to actually go there. And without that, you won't understand the 100 conversation that we talked about, right? You need to speak to 50 to 75 prospects, to be competitors, to be people who are in the ecosystem that can tell you what business models are working and not working. If you try to do that sitting around a far away distance, sitting from India, you will spend 3-4 years of learning which others will get in 6 months.
Correct.
So it's a very contextual thing. It is possible to build globally without being present where your customers are, but then there are pockets. If you are trying to build, and especially newer areas in higher ticket purchases, then it is important for you to be closer. So therefore, I said, my answer is changed and it's being far more nuanced than this course.
So because my experiences, again, I come from the old, a little old school, I can call it now, when you compare it to today's generation. When I was in health tech, to speak to the doctor, to the physician and everything, we could not customize the workflow unless we spent 2-3 days with the hospital to understand. And even when building Haplo today, I mean, fortunately, thanks to people like you and my other person, Keshva, who have asked or suggested to build it in such a way that it's not customization but tailoring it to the customer. Today the framework is built in such a way that we work with the commercial real estate, we spend a day with them, or we translate their workflow into the workflow. That makes it more easier for them to adapt to what we are doing. So when I asked this question, that's where I was focusing on how can you build without knowing your customer base. That's one thing. So you have answered that from a category of, there are certain set categories which you can work. Social media is something what you can think about, something else. But I also realized the growth, probably I might be wrong here, that's why I'm asking this question. The growth of the product or service what you offer might also depend upon the environment where you're selling it. Probably it might be easy in America to sell because people are more open to exploring and virtually buying, but not in other parts of the world. How to, as a tech founder,
Many things you're right, Harit. I should have prepared with saying that it is easy to earn $1 get to
I wanted to come at the end, my closing remark and your favorite statement. Yes.
So in that sense, like, the environment plays an important role. As long as the value is evident through an experience, and if the ticket size is small, then people make the purchase. If the value evidence takes a lot of time, right? Then it is a considered purchase, and in that trust has to play a lot of roles. So people will cut
Correct.
and you will do that customization, and then is when the transaction or the purchase will pass away. Um, so again, like, I say that even though software is a intangible good, and it is not that we can't sell intangible good in India. We sell devotional content, but intangible good. It's like
It's a multi-million dollar business. Yeah.
it's just that with respect to software or in India, the pitch around software is usually is about saving time that not work well. If the pitch is about saying that this is going to make money, then it's to sell slightly better than saving time. And I would say that it has got to do with the cultural context, right? So we are a low trust. I mean, India are like a low trust society. They want to see a lot more evidence to make the purchase. Therefore, the sales cycles are longer in India. As long as the value evidence is there, then the sales cycles max that, and then they are like much shorter in US, and that's why it needs to be it's easier to like earn its own dollar than I will be.
One other aspect, I mean, this is out of my area, it isn't marketing, but I want to understand something. B2B sales, right? Especially you're trying to sell SaaS or you're trying to sell a product or a service, anything. I'm just talking about B2B sales. Predominantly, if I go to let's say any ERP tool website or the big companies I'm talking about, they always have a contact us form or they'll have offer you a try period. Okay, so this has been the traditional way of how you experience what I'm building. If you are interested, please do buy, or if it is a large ticket item, then please contact me, I will come back. How can a startup or a scale up, I'll use the word scale up a lot more than startup, how can scale ups connect and give the confidence to businesses to engage with their product or service? What has been your experience in your portfolio of organizations you have worked with, which do B2B, which sell to businesses? What has your experience been? How should the large organizations look at the smaller guys, and how should smaller guys approach the larger guys? And also, as a consumer, let's say my company is growing big, I'm selling a high ticket, I built a high ticket software. Let's say I'm a startup, but I built a high ticket software. So if you want to buy my service, let's say $1,000, how do I engage? Or apart from this trial or contact us, is there a third way out?
So you said B2B, and then there is like within B2B, there is the older traditional enterprise, and then there is the software as a service subscription type of a way. And with software as a service, if you are doing like say a ticket size of less than $3,000, then I think the behaviors are slightly different where compared to like when the where ticket size are more than $3,000 per annum. Right? So there, one simple way to think about this is the traditional enterprise is like how you build and sell wake of homes.
Okay.
Where you build a brand, show the ad on TV, and then you create a field sales force, and then say we take it along different geographical segments, and then like knock on doors, and then say we have a health issue. We think that water could be a problem. We are from Eureka Pokes. You have seen us on TV. And today, if you buy, we give you 20% offer and we help solve health problems for you, which are what disease. Like simple sales pitch, but that's the go-to market, which is like, a brand that is built and then there is a field force. That has been the traditional sales. And here we are talking about, tens of thousands of dollars, right? Because it is a considered purchase and this is how the sales process will work. But when SaaS happened, there was like a big shift. That's not how SaaS is sold. SaaS is sold the way Levi jeans is sold. You don't go door to door selling jeans, even though yes, sure. So you actually create this aspirational brand and then like hire Deepika Padukone and then you create this amazing looking ad or saying that, people who wear this jeans are poor, right? And then you attract them to come to a Levi's jeans store. And then you tell them that, try it here. And the sales there are not pushy.
Correct.
They are only like, order collector. They're like, okay, you like, now come and like, let me do the billing for you. If you did not have a good try on, then let me help you with that. So the job and the role of the sales guy, it was very different than the Eureka folks versus the UI Blooms, right? So SaaS is more about, okay, bring to a central place, get them to try to. And that's where the role of website changes. Right? The role of websites in traditional is more like a brochure. In the role of a website in a SaaS is more like a showroom. Right? And in the showroom, we are saying that, look, you come and just visit my showroom and you have to create a showroom in such a way that people get enticed. We're walking. That anyway, doing another cafe to get them to come to the showroom. They come into the showroom and you create the experience in such a way that they want to go the trial, and you create all those hats in the showroom itself that they get triggered to make the purchase right then and there. And the smaller the ticket size, the more instant they are willing to make the purchase. If it is like, a bigger ticket size, then they want to actually come to the store multiple times. So now let's actually move from the metaphor world and make it very tactical on the website, right? So on the website, the first thing that needs to be done, especially when you're selling to global audiences, you cannot have a single spelling mistake. And this is the biggest mistake that's on the snake. And you need to be actually talking in a language that the global audience can understand. Correct. Right? And if you are actually primarily targeting Europe, then your copy cannot have UK English. Your copy cannot have American English. So the first thing that you want to do is that you want to hire a copywriter who is from that geography and can help you actually translate that English. I mean, there are some basic frameworks, it's available on the internet, and there are so many SaaS founders in India who just know this really very, very intimately, right? So the first thing that you need to do is make sure that your H1, the first sentence that is there, the explaining, the association and the differentiation. Are you saying that I'm a CRM for HVAC news? Instead of that, you're saying you are borrowing something from a big company, saying we will conquer the world. And I don't understand what we take, right? Or even if you say that we save time. Even a house help can save that. You have to say that, I'm an accounting package.
Correct.
For you to do a data entry and therefore save time, right? So the H1 should actually explain the positioning correctly. And if you just explain the positioning correctly, but you have not created an emotional connect, then people will not remember you. Right? The accounting package that kills drudgery. This is what will make it be impactful.
Correct.
And create more emotional connect. And then after that, you want to put logos of customers who have already bought you. That will immediately create a social chain.
But what if I don't have customers? I'm a new guy. I don't have anybody. So what should I fill in with that?
Sure. So I mean, you're getting way too much into the weeds, but since you are,
I don't know, but yeah,
we help with that as well. So see, when you have customers, tell customer stories. When you don't have customers, tell founders' origin story. Why did Hari build this? Why does it matter to Hari?
correct.
Right? Hari was facing this drudgery, and he wanted to make sure that nobody else in the world
Faces this.
and that is why he's attacking this problem. And will create the emotional value. So if you don't have customer story, you start with origin story. Right? This is a common problem that anybody who's giving started now will have, right? Then you just have to turn it into the story that people will relate to and know that, why does Hari want to do this? What does Hari stand for? Then that will create resonance. Then if they move forward, they're like, okay, they'll compare. And then you say that, look, you want to pick this choice over 15 other choices that is out there. And then you want to put a CPA, call to action, which could be like trial.
Correct.
Right? And then, or maybe you want to, if people are not ready, you want to show how this experience will look like to a video. So I'm getting into the weeds. Like I said, that's how a website is, SaaS website, they're like, well-known, hacks and techniques on how you build a website, a SaaS website that it looks like a Levi's jeans showroom, where people come in and they feel compelled to try, and then they have an amazing experience, and then they can give you $20, $200 a month. Right? And if it is $200 a month, we'll think a lot. Right? If it is like $10, $20, if you're talking about that voice pal, right? Yeah. So if that voice pal thing that you had, you were like, look, I mean, you just give me the price that I want. I'm probably I'll buy. Yeah. Like, I'll buy it for me. Correct. And then you would have immediately make the purchase. Correct. So how do you actually explain? How do you remove objection? So in that case, the designer of the website should have said, oh, you are coming from a country where the purchase price not taken into account. If I take into account, will that take away your objection?
Correct.
This is what he did.
He never asked back the question. So I said, forget it. I'll do it on my own. It's not rocket science.
Thinking about this as a buying process and mapping out the experience that matches the buying process is what is important. In fact, one of the things that we often have conversation with the founders is that go to market is basically matching your selling process to what the buying process of region customer is. So you understand what the buying process is. Some may want to actually come to the Levi's jeans showroom. Some may want to actually be sold at their home. So you should not mix and match the different approaches. So if the ticket sizes are high, that it may even be economical to go and sell at home. Like for instance, what if you are selling 2 lakh diamond studded jeeps?
Correct.
Right? You don't need a Levi's showroom. Right? You would be willing to walk to the movie star and then say, okay, let me sell you diamond studded jeeps.
So that's classical inbound. Suppose if you have to do a outbound, and that's the normal bigger ticket size. And I want to bring in two other things which you have mentioned in the past. The CRM will be taken over by autonomous GTM. That's one. And second, because it's an inbound, you will also have a scenario where in the outbound case, inbound, the possibility of people looking for that particular way, they are already facing a problem and they are searching for it. Outbound, that might not be the case. And hence, if you actually take the concept of autonomous AI agents, and can you do things like possibly for Rajan specifically write a mail which will appeal to you? Couple of times I approach through different mediums and then try and call you up, the likelihood of your conversion becomes high. In the AI world, is that a likelihood that most of the AI SDRs are taking?
See, there are there are merits and demerits of doing outbound and inbound, and it is very contextual to say that where and what will work. Inbound is great for building trust. Greatest for building trust. If you build that trust and then you work on that, creating the flow of leads coming into your website, like visitors coming to your website, turning into leads and things like that. But what ends up happening is that the leads that are coming to you may not be the ICP.
And they are low ticket size, right?
They usually look at it from a low ticket size perspective. The other side of this is that if you want to build a scalable business, eventually you have to pair an outbound GT. When I say scalable, I'm talking about way beyond $100 million of revenue. You need to actually have a way for you to build that out. Now, if Notion is just trying to go from 100 million to 500 million, it cannot do it just to the strength of inbound only, especially if it has to do it in limited time. If it had unlimited time, maybe it can get there.
Sure.
Right? So outbound GTM is critical for you to actually have a certain type of growth. Now, can AI help in that? Definitely AI can help. I think what is going to be important is that it is sufficiently supported by humans. In that process, there has to be sufficient amount of humans that are coming involved and giving that trust.
So fractional CRO kind of coming in and building that.
And then it's going to be very, very critical for that to happen. All the very trivial jobs can be automated. I understood. Where people who are more senior can come and automate those jobs away and can have impact with more and more people by themselves, as opposed to using a
Army kind of.
using an army of people. Right. So in that sense, outbound can get a help of a lot of automation, can get help from autonomous GTM. But outbound, the challenge with outbound is because of this autonomous GTM possibility, a lot of people are jumping in and people are getting queued out. They're getting a lot of spam and then people just don't resonate with that. Right. So outbound GTM also will work when you build a stronger brand.
Or if you have a mass personalized story kind of thing where I'm
Nice. So see, let's look at this, right? So I get an email from some marketer where who's exactly what I care for and things like that. But it says something on the something on the subject line, which may be more about my value, right? Versus I get an email from let's say Mark Zuckerberg, and you might think it is spam. But someone that let's say I get a mail from IBM, right? Their IBM, at least I have that trust, and I'm like, okay, this is coming from IBM. I'm at operate. The personalization is more about okay, I've been understood. See, again goes back to the same thing in marketing, right? Am I being understood? Do I recall? Can I trust? So when I get a hyper personalized image, I'm being understood. But is there enough for me to trust?
that is where the brand pays well.
Yeah, that is where familiarity, social proof, brand, all of this will play a role. So for outbound also to work effectively, it has to come from a strong brand that is built. Right. And at scale, if you want to build businesses at much bigger scale, if you don't figure out outbound, it is not going to work. But funnily enough, your brand gets built more through inbound.
Yeah.
More by saying that look, this is what I am, come and check me out, experience me out. That is a much better and faster way to build brand. Building brand through outbound is not possible. Outbound at least, like outreach, this is not possible. Not easy.
Because you don't want to be sold to, you want to buy.
People have their filters really high when somebody approaches them. Right? If they have approached someone and if they have seen the association, then they found trust. This is how funnily the human brain works, right? If somebody comes and tells that I'm great, I'm like, no, I'm not going to believe him, right? If you get somebody else to say that I'm great for you, then you might as well believe. But if you go and find out on your own that, hey, who are great people in that list, you somehow come, oh yeah, looks like this guy is great, right? So that's how the human brain works.
Then great analogies in Big Bang Theory. Penny tries to, Sheldon is becoming annoying. So Penny tries the parenting book and says, Leonard, give him the choices. I can take you by 3 p.m. or you can take an Uber. Let him make the choice. So, I mean, you're right. I mean, I always prefer somebody coming to me rather than me bombarding you on an inbox. So for that also, I think I learned something from Keshva. He has one principle, but I have a different principle. For me, when somebody connects with me, I do a follow up 24 hours, then 48 hours, then I will take it to 72 hours. So 5 days and next week mid one more time I will do, and after that I disconnect. Because if the person is genuinely the person came to me because he was interested to know about something what I sell, and I shouldn't bug him anymore. So I have 2-3 times, or my formula works 2-3 times, and after that I leave it. And there have been successes because when you sell services that too which are niche, it takes time for people to come back, and you have to accept that fact that it'll take a time. I mean, for instance, one of the sale with Haplo, we took around 14 months. So first of all, I had to convince that elderly gentleman who was not tech savvy. He struggles with email itself, and then he had a lot of questions. So it took 1 year for him to one day out of the blue call me and said, Hari, come over and show my team what you do. So that's when it happened. So it took, it's always glad to hear from them rather than you keep bombarding them. And when they say either they shout at you or block you, that's not the way it goes. Excellent. I'll take one of Shaswat's question. Then I have one more last with, or you want to go? Future of SaaS. What?
Let me take that.
Go ahead.
You have given this was a masterclass on marketing. Literally, if you actually want to do inbound or outbound, this is Rajan's formula, and this will definitely work. But let me try and shift the gears and come to a narrative which is popular narrative right now. Is SaaS dead? Especially in the age of AI. And we saw 2 weeks back Ken Ken's article on that, and it was very well researched one, but they specifically mentioned Indian SaaS will be kind of eaten by AI. Do you subscribe to that narrative? And what let's do some future ball gazing to where do we go from here in 2 years time?
So the answer is yes and no. And I'm not saying this because I want to take a very politically correct view about this. SaaS is dead in the same way mainframe is dead, right? So if you ask, is mainframe dead? Yes, it's dead. Nobody wants to actually work on mainframes today. Nobody wants to invest in companies that are building mainframes today. Maybe they want to invest in companies that are building bottom computer or supercomputer, but nobody wants to actually invest in mainframes today. But on the other hand, mainframe still drives a lot of revenue. A lot of people have jobs that uses mainframe skills, especially in the financial sector. Mainframes did not go away. In fact, when SaaS was still popular, people said the enterprise old style, the on-prem deployment will go away. On-premise is dead. On-prem was also declared dead, but on-premise is not dead today. Right? On-premise is much smaller portion of what the SaaS revenue is. And I think it still is about maybe 65 portion of revenue of software in the world today is on-prem, right? About 10-15 years ago, SaaS was less than 5% revenue. Today, maybe they are north of 25% revenue, but still a major portion of revenue still comes from on-prem. Now, is the growth rate of on-prem revenue growing or decreasing? It is decreasing. The growth rate of SaaS is increasing way faster than the growth rate of on-prem revenue, right? And mainframe is much smaller than that, but mainframe is not dead. However, when people say SaaS is dead, you should look at who is saying that SaaS is dead. SaaS is dead only in the hearts of the venture investor. Right? Because they are looking to invest in the next 10 years, 20 years. On the other hand, there will still be a lot of SaaS tools that we built. Maybe the amount of SaaS tools that will be there will consolidate. But SaaS itself, this is not going to go away. So when founders ask me this question, should I build a SaaS tool or not? I suggest that if they're trying to build a venture scale business, then SaaS is not the right place to look. Doesn't mean that you cannot build maybe a million, 10 million, or maybe even a $50 million revenue business, because people have still been building that. So that is continued to exist. But if you want to build like $1 billion revenue, then that is where venture investors today don't believe. But then there again, a major point of view. So who is saying that is a key question, right? If a founder is wanting to build a SaaS business and build a sizable business, there is still possible to build a sizable business, not just the outlier type of business. At least that is what the current going belief seems to be, because what AI is doing is it is coming and doing automation at a level which is almost unprecedented. We have not seen this. Now, it's as if you really look about it, it is essentially 15 steps translated into a digital workflow, right? And that is what you are trying to use to create efficiency. Now, what is happening with AI is you don't need 100 steps to do a particular task. With AI, you can just do it in 2 steps. Like, for instance, if I just take a simple example of creating a song, it requires coordinating with lyricists, with musicians, with singers, and things like that. You go to a sumo.ai, in 2 minutes, you can create a song, you give it lyrics, and then you say that, this is the type of music it should be, and it will generate it. Not that it is going to be like professional quality that you can immediately use it in a movie, but now you can use Suno.ai to create 25 different variations and say, I want to pick out one. Correct. As opposed to spending 10 lakh rupees and doing all this coordination. So what required 100 steps is now possible to do in 2 steps. And this is something that is happening in every sphere of workflow, whether it is B2B or B2C. And that compression of that workflow is what is resulting in this question of saying, if those number of steps itself don't have to be digitized, you don't need tools to digitize those steps on sound editing and things like that, then the sound editing tools are not relevant anymore. So that is where the AI is creating this unprecedented redesign possibility. And therefore the tools that were built earlier, people are saying, okay, what will it take for us to make the same outcome generated using the new way of thinking about workflows using AI.
So essentially, that means that a bootstrap founder today, SaaS founder, should not look at VC today, should look at IPO and possibly.
Probably I'll contradict there, Shaswat. What I'm understanding from what Rajan is saying is, what is the SaaS you are building? So, for example, if you look at ChatGPT or Claude, and if you are building a new LLM yourself and you put it on SaaS, it'll run. It'll run as long as it'll run. I'm sure ChatGPT and these guys will run for the next 20, 10, 20 years. It depends on what kind of SaaS you're trying to build. And that's where he's coming and saying, hey, there is a market for you to build $100 million business. Nobody is saying no, but VCs might not be looking, and for them, a SaaS might be dead. But if I'm creating an AI tool which can probably do your cooking at home, let's say I charge $49 per month, I'm sure you'll subscribe. That will not be dead, right? That kind of SaaS will exist.
That's what I was alluding.
Okay. But that also means that it's almost like if there is a lot of consolidation that is happening, then horizontal SaaS will actually make way for the verticalization of SaaS. That is also a very likely outcome, right?
There is going to be a lot of consolidation that is going to happen. I've never used the word horizontal and vertical SaaS in the past, although there is some merit to it. The difference between horizontal and vertical is someone who can go really, really deep.
Yeah.
Like for instance, if we're building like a CRM for the pharma industry, there are regular workflows that exist for like just keeping track of sales, which is like a simple process, is not going to get covered where there is a multi-stakeholder sales that is happening in pharma. And that is where when you build a vertical CRM for pharma, you go far more deeper and people are going to pick this vertical CRM over a horizontal CRM. What is going to happen is that, in many cases, these small tools which end up becoming like a feature, like a Calendly, or if you know how calendar scheduling is important for a sales call, they all may get consolidated because as a buyer, I don't want to buy calendar scheduling from Calendly and I don't want to buy CRM from HubSpot or calendar function from Google. I want to see if I can consolidate it all together because it makes it easier for me to actually deal with the purchase process. Now, it may look very trivial, but when you have to deal with 1,500 tools across an organization of 10,000, you'll be like, let's rationalize this. That type of consolidation is going to happen. But if the particular workflow involves saying, I need to map out 15 people sales conversation, which a horizontal tool cannot do, then you still go for that vertical, right? So it may actually stratify more. Then it is possible that more and more platforms will emerge, which are more horizontal platforms, and smaller feature might get consolidated there. Because this aspect of too many tools are actually creating a problem for enterprise.
Correct.
But in verticals, the people will still go deep. Like in healthcare, they'll go deep. In pharma, they will go deep. For managing your coffee shops, the workflows that you need are going to be very different from any other ones.
You have the Pilots app, right? That's a vertical SaaS. I mean, that's I think $3,000 or $4,000 per annum. And that's again very deep it's for pilots. It's used by pilots, and the airlines buy it for them. So those things will never go over. Before we close, Rajan, here's something what I want to ask. You have been at the epicenter of all this AI and things changing and everything. And we also keep hearing from all the social media or whatever, jobs are going to be dead, people are getting fired and all that stuff, which personally I feel it is all marketing gimmick, or people want to be heard, that's about it. But your personal opinion, how should this and a step behind, generation, when I said 10 years behind and now, how should people start looking at coexisting along with AI? So typical product manager, when I look at tools in product management now, AI tools and everything, honestly speaking, the tool is not teaching me anything. I'm teaching the tool. Actually, for me, AI is, I am spending time to buy the tool and teach the tool to do what I want it to do. Right. So actually, it's double work. Rather, I'll be easier. I'll do it my way. But everybody wants me to use it. So I'm using it. How should, for the next at least 10 years, how should people learn to coexist with AI?
See, every time there is a big shift happens, forces us to change, right? So either we can change because we have curiosity, or we can change because we are forced to change, right? I don't think it's got to do with age. Maybe like when you are younger, you find it a lot more natural. I remember Kevin Kelly said this: any technology that you experience less than 35, we find it very very natural, and any technology which you experience more than 35, you find it very alien. Like WhatsApp is alien, and our parents, correct, right? Dial-up phones are alien to it, right? So that happens, but at the same time, like Asian parents, and they approach and speak to their nears and nears who are across the globe, ocean, then they find a way to adapt. So some people are very curious; they will go and experiment, and then they'll adopt it very naturally, while others will be doing it because they have a forced reason. So with respect to AI, I think there is a lot of things that are changing at a fundamental level on how we experience something. This was something that was projected for a long period of time, whether in the 70s or the 80s, and that's why you see movies that come and say, okay, AI will come like this, we'll find an AI which will have the entire knowledge of the humanity within it. And if you really look at ChatGPT Claude, I call them as compression engines. Basically, a compression of internet. So anything that's there on internet, it has compressed in a way that it is able to, play it back when you're asking a question to. So the changes that were initially projected is going to happen in 70s and all had not happened in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and finally they are happening now. So the people that are curious, they will adopt, whether they are 20-year-old, whether they're 40-year-old, whether they're 100-year-old. Yeah. Those people that are not curious, they will be facing a serious jolt or a shock. Just like how, let's say, people who were cobblers and they were not able to keep up with what is happening in the industrial revolution, where people were able to manufacture shoes, or people who were selling, where tailors were not able to keep up with what happened when the manufacturing shift happened. So those people will get forced. They'll move away from wherever their natural habitat is. Then they will move to places where there are more opportunities. So it's a question of whether you want to embrace the change yourself, or it affects your likelihood, or affects your confidence, and then you change. So that way, I think it is a societal problem, right? And that is why I like what Singapore did. It created and gave a stipend to all the citizens, saying, like, regardless of how old you are, right? You use this to upskill yourself. And the real question that I would ask from a nation or a society perspective is, I think we have to ask this question for us, saying, where do we have natural advantage? So if you really look at it from a startup perspective, I would say, at least my experience has been that after the IT services, of course, there was a consumer startup boom, consumer startup come there. But I would actually believe that the advantage is more around building software from here and then selling to the US, selling locally, right? That's where we were able to add a lot more impact. Not as much as IT services, but in the same scale of thinking of the IT services. Like, so all countries need to ask what is their comparative advantage when it comes to AI, right? And use that comparative advantage to say, okay, let us use that comparative advantage to actually move forward. And I still believe when it comes to software, it is still the applications. And from if you look at the AI tech stack, people build foundation models, chipsets. They build builder tools that use the foundation model, and then they build application. They build horizontal application. They build vertical application. They build services, and there is this talk about services as software. I feel we should play to our strengths. The strengths that in India, from an Indian perspective, is that building application, they go really deep. Build vertical applications. Build in those areas where other countries, other ecosystems like Silicon Valley, they do not want to build them because it is not very sexy. And in those areas, we should go and play. And that is where we should actually amplify our skill sets. Build practical AI applications is what I would say. So if you were to ask me how can I help people navigate forward, I would say that go learn how to build vertical AI applications in boring areas. But that is where we invest. But right? So I would say generally you should be curious about building more and more applications, learn how to build more and more applications, and build those applications which others don't want to build, so that we can leverage the advantage for. Indians are very good at machine learning, very good at data science. This is an area that comes very naturally to them. If you go to the valley and then look at any of the head of ML, head of data sciences, you will invariably find an Indian. If there is not an Indian, then there will be Chinese, right? But 2 out of 3 you will find Indian. So those areas that we should capitalize on, and then say, okay, let's become the data science / AI on the application side category.
Awesome. Just one last thing on that. You also mentioned that AI largely are compression engines, to use your word specifically. And these compression engines at this point of time basically do 2-3 things, which is either retrieval of information, processing of that information, and then showing it back in a very glamorous way to you, right? That's the past of AI in the last 2 years. That is how these engines have evolved. What is the future for these engines? Will they become probabilistic? At this point of time, they are still deterministic in nature. Will they go towards that side? Will they cross the threshold? What's your view on that?
Okay, I don't want to go to the philosophical part of this. I guess you meant they are currently non-deterministic, correct? And will they cross that level? So first of all, I would say that the compression engine, at least to me, is a different paradigm from retrieval paradigm. So if you really look at the compression paradigm, this is different from the search engine paradigm. The search engine paradigm was the retrieval paradigm, where the compression was not the key, it was the retrieval. And Google's page rank and all was really in its intelligence and how effectively you are able to bring the relevant result. And they didn't care about how the data was stored. And that's why huge amounts of data was stored. But if you really look at a neural network or a language model, they are basically all this knowledge only in few wings, right? And those weights are in different. If you think about the neural network layer, there are different layers. The first layer just understands the color, the second layer understands the shape of an image, and so on, of the data, so on and so forth.
But with agents now, all of this layering is possible, which was not there perhaps.
If you really think about agency, agents is a language model which is attached with a prompt and query. That is one of the best definitions that I've heard, which came in a paper from Anthropic, which is this compression engine was self-contained. But if you allow this compression engine to talk to the external world, because it can do function follow, and also break down the problem in a way that it can think about it as logical sequence of steps to be done, right? Which people are calling as reasoning, or saying that, oh, you take a problem and you break it. But if you didn't have this function calling with this compression engine, then agents don't perform. Agents don't work. So this ability for this compression engine to exist on its own, and its ability to then call a function for, let's say, to a browser through another LLM is what makes this agents or this agentic framework possible, right? Your question was about in terms of going from non-deterministic to deterministic, and this is going to change. I think, this is not as much about it. To me, it doesn't matter whether it is non-deterministic or deterministic. I think if the system is going to be designed in such a way that, how much amount of non-determinism can you handle? Right? If you look at poetry, non-determinism is not a bug, it is a feature. Right? When the AI systems hallucinate, you're like, good, it has come and told me a perspective that I had not heard before. But when you are trying to do the same thing on an invoice value, you cannot take creative liberty. Correct. Right? But what is the tolerance level that you want? And can you actually minimize that? This is what I think will be more about it. And I don't think, it is more about saying that, okay, can we determine can we design a deterministic system? People are talking about neuro-symbolic architecture, and this has been a debate which was 40, 50 years old, where the neural network-based architecture, which is what is currently popular language models are a type of deep learning. Deep learning is a type of neural network. And in the last 12 years or 12, 15 years is where it become relevant. And the last few years, it like now since 2017, it has become popular. Before that, like if you go to the 70s and the 80s, people built expert systems, which is all about symbolic, saying that, I will find the grammar in a language, I will represent that grammar, and I will do natural language processing. Using a non-deterministic system like a neural network was considered to be like complete no. Right? It was a pariah approach, right? Like, no, I don't want to do it. Now, this neural network based approach has started producing results. People are like, okay, let us take this forward. And then they are saying, okay, can we combine this with a symbolic architecture and then create a neuro-symbolic architecture? That is how the research is progressing forward. But I don't know if we need that, right? I personally feel sometimes what happens is then the simplest solution are the best solution. And at this point in time, like 15 years ago, neural network, when I was building, designing, it did not work because we did not have the scale of the data and the compute. What is really has worked is there is a slightly better architecture and you have thrown a lot of scale and a lot of compute. My view is if we throw more scale and more compute, we'll be able to reduce the non-determinism to the level where it is still workable. Well, I mean, will a neurosymbolic architecture help make it deterministic? Maybe it will, but maybe we don't need this is my current view.
Perfect. Awesome. So, thank you, Rajan, for taking time. And once again, in midst of your travels, you ensured you spend time with us. Thank you so much. Hopefully, we'll have a session back with you going more vertical rather than going more horizontal.
Thank you. Thank you, Shashwat. Thank you.
Thank you. This was really superb.